Hi, everybody. My name is Gina Pohl, and I grew up without a dad. My story on how I became a life coach for fatherless daughters, I wanted to share with you today. It's my story. I'm not claiming that it's better or worse than anyone else's, it's just mine. My parents divorced when I was 3 months old. At that point, we moved in with my grandpa, and he was like a dad to me. He was the greatest person in the world. Um, I was still sad, and longed for a father. I remember my mom telling me the story that one year for Christmas, the only thing on my list was that I wanted a father. And now I don't remember that. I was must have been very little, but I feel really bad about it now because obviously there was nothing she could do about it, right? Um, so about 7 years old, we moved out of my grandfather's house, and my mom bought a house, just her and I. Um, and when she did that, she had to get a second job in order to be able to afford the house and, feed us, clothes, and all of the things. And when she did that, I was left alone a lot. Um, I remember that I would, get ready for school in the morning, and she would drop me off like an hour and a half early at school. I mean, nobody was even there. The doors were barely unlocked, and I would sit there, alone by myself waiting for other kids to come to school. And then I would go home after school, be alone until she came home from her first job, and we would eat dinner real quick, and then she would be off to her second job. And I was alone quite a bit. I actually remember sitting on the couch because I would try to wait up for her to make sure she got home okay. And if there were stars out that night, I would sit on a couch right in front of the windows at the front of our house, and I would look out at the sky. And if there were stars out, I remember doing this so often. I would say the little saying, twinkle, twinkle, little star. Um, or how did it go? Oh, something about I wish I may, I wish I might have the wish I wish tonight. And I always remember that I would always wish for a father. I just wanted a dad. I wanted him to want me, and love me and do all of the things a dad should do, right? Um Around that time, I think, is when I made him not being there mean something about me. So the fact that he didn't take the time to spend with me or get to know me or anything really. It I made it mean that I wasn't good enough. When Because he didn't love me, I made it mean that I wasn't lovable. When he didn't want me, I felt rejected and abandoned. Um and what's interesting is when you search for evidence to confirm something, good or bad, you'll find the evidence to confirm it. And that's what I did a lot of my younger years. So I just kind of sealed the deal that it was true. I wasn't enough. I wasn't lovable, and I was abandoned and rejected by my father. I guess right around 12 years old, an old neighbor that used to live near my mom and dad when I was a baby showed up at the house to visit my mom. And he was in the Navy. And I remember him saying, "Hey, I know where your dad is. Do you want his address in the Navy? And you can write to him." And I was like, "Well, yeah, of course, so a handful of letters went back and forth. Um, it was just the contact that, I have been looking for forever. Um, and there wasn't a lot to the letters. I was very careful how I worded things because I didn't want to scare him off. So I made it, very generic, didn't ask a lot of questions. Um, about things that I wanted to know, like why, right? Um, so that went back and forth. It was less than a year. And my mom came to me one day and she said, I wanted to ask you what you think about this. And I'm like, okay, what? And she said, I want to go after your dad for child support. And I was like, it was a no brainer. I'm like, Mom, you've been working two jobs my whole life. I've been left alone. I'm like, yeah, get your money, you know? And she said to me, she goes, you know what this means? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to get any more letters. I said, do it anyway. So I guess right around 13 is when I was 13, she started to get the child support. And yeah, that's when the letter stopped. Um, so by then, she was able to work only one job, but I was 13 and I wanted my freedom. I wanted out of the house. You know, I had been stuck in the house by myself for 13 years. You know, I had to get out and like talk to people, meet people. I was the kind of person that I would put myself in the middle of a big group of people and just be like, thank God I'm not alone, right? Um, around, let's see, 14 or 15, I guess it was, you know, I there was a two different guys that I kind of I guess kind of dated or whatever. But I didn't know what relationships look like, right? I didn't have an example of what they were supposed to be. And at that point, I just wanted someone to love me. You know, I just wanted to finally have someone love me. And they were a little older than I was. And of course, you know, when you come out of the gates being like, hey, I love you, love me, let's do this, right? You know, kind of scares people off. So, of course, you know, I was rejected. And that feeling of rejection reminded me, it was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I can't count on men, I can't trust them. And at that point, that's where I armored up. So, there was armor on me at all times, especially when it came to men. And after that, all my relationships were very short. Um, if they started to like me too much, I'd break up with them. If I started to like them too much, I'd break up with them. It was much easier just to have very short relationships before things got too complicated and I had to deal with whatever was going on in here. Um, so in my teens, I struggled a lot with acceptance. I was always wondering, am I accepted? Am I being accepted? And when I felt like I was being accepted, I wasn't really believing it. And I was just waiting for the rejection to come. So that was fun. You know, you're a teenager anyway, and then you're doing that to yourself too. Um, fast forward to 21. I was 21 years old and I decided one night, there was probably beers involved, that I was going to call my father and get all the answers that I wanted all of my life, right? I was going to get my answers. And so I called, who knows what time it was. It was probably like 1 in the morning. Um and oh, I forgot to tell you. Let me go back. So go back to when I was 15. So I jumped the gun a little bit cuz this is super important. So when I was 15 years old, I came home from being out with my friends. It was like 1 in the morning and I was making grilled cheese in the kitchen. And the phone rang in the kitchen and I grabbed it real fast because I was afraid it was one of my friends and they were going to wake my mom up and it was going to be a whole big thing and I didn't want anything to do with that. So I answered the phone real quick. I'm like, "Hello?" And on the other line, it was my father. First phone call. And he was like, "Hey, Gina?" And I'm like, "Yeah, who's this?" And he was like, "It's your dad." I'm like, "Hi," you know, very strange. And he was like, I'm calling you from Saudi Arabia and I'm high on opium." And I'm like, "Okay. Well, I'm making grilled cheese. So let's do this, right?" And he made little bit of conversation and then it was a very short phone call. I would say less than 2 minutes. And he was like, "Okay, I got to go watch the camel races. I'll talk to you later." And he hung up. And that was my very first phone call with my father and it was just the strangest thing. So I apologize. I jump back and forth. So now we're going to when I'm 21, and this is the second and last phone call I ever had with my father. So, like I said, I was 21. There was probably beers involved. I was going to get my answers, right? So I called, and it's interesting because when I was thinking about this to tell you guys the story, both of us called each other right around 1 a.m. and we're both apparently not in the best shape. So I called. His wife answered at the time. I don't even know how I got his phone number, but his wife answered at the time, and she was getting him on the phone, and he got on there was some arguing there. He got on the phone and he called me a bitch. And I just immediately hung up. I'm like, okay, all right, that's it for me. I'm done. I'm not even going to try ever again. So that kind of sealed the deal for me that I was always going to be broken. I was always going to have that hole inside of me, and I was always not going to be enough, and that I was unlovable. So in my and so the next day I was living with my mom at the time, and I was in the kitchen doing something, and the phone rang and she answered, and she was like, "Gina, it's your dad." And I was like, "Pff." So I took the phone, I didn't even put it to my ear. I held it right like this, and I'm like, "F you." Click, boom, done. Last time I talked to him. So I spent a lot of my 20s searching for approval that I was enough. And I did this well into my 30s. And it's interesting because I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but after I've done all this work on myself looking back, it's like I did this with males in my life. One that was really interesting to me is like my bosses, my male bosses. I was always going above and beyond trying to be the best employee just to get a good job out of them. Just a confirmation that I was enough and that I was doing good. So that was interesting that I figured that out later. Um, so when I was 29, I married my husband, and I made the best choice of a husband I could ever ask for. And one of the reasons why I married him, other than I loved him, was because the way he grew up and how close his family is, and just their connection. I knew that if I had children with this man, he would never leave his kids. And it wasn't even about him leaving me, right? Because I can handle that. I've been abandoned before, but I never wanted my kids to go through what I did. So when I married him, I knew 100% that he would never leave his kids. And I still believe that to this day. He's an amazing man. He's an amazing father. And I'm so blessed. Um, at one point, my brothers came to visit. So I have two half brothers, all different mothers, right? And one older, one younger. We did not grow up together. The oldest one, he contacted me when I was like 19 or 20, and then we, had conversations back and forth. My little brother actually got in contact with me like 2 weeks before my wedding. So the first time I met him was at my wedding, and we've kept in contact, and they came up to visit. It was like before Thanksgiving one year. I don't remember how old I was, but I know I was in my 30s. And I think at that point I only had two kids. But, we all, hung out, and my little brother said something to me. He said, cuz he grew up with my father and we never really talked about it, so I wasn't sure how that relationship was there. But he said to me, he was like, "I wanted to ask you, would you be interested in meeting, our dad?" And I remember this. I laughed at him. I just couldn't believe that he even said that to me. And I was like, "Oh, what? So is he getting old and, you know, thinking about dying and all the regrets he has of his life?" And my little brother was like, "Well, yeah, kind of." And I remember it's so harsh. I was like, "Well, you know what? That's really too bad for him that now he's thinking about it, and tell him I said, good luck at the pearly gates. From what I understand, God is more forgiving than me. So good luck." But it was in such a harsh angry way. I mean, the look on my brother's faces, because they're both standing there, they were kind of like, I'm like, yeah, I'm bitter. I'm like, and angry, right? So yeah, I was in the angry phase. Um, so yeah, didn't meet him. That didn't happen. Um, so in my 30s, it was a lot of anger. And then at some point, I want to say late 30s, it turned back into sadness and disappointment. So, think about it. When you're a kid, it was sad and disappointment. Then you hit your teens and 20s. I guess mine stretched a little longer into my 30s. There was like anger towards it, right? And what didn't happen and the way it should have been and all those things. And then later on, late 30s, it just went back to sadness and disappointment, right? And I remember I'd see kids, or I would see dads with their kids like shopping or just anywhere really. And I would always, there was this whisper in my mind. It was a thought, and it was always, I wish I would have had that. And that thought always reminded me of the hole that I had inside of me. And this happened, often because you're always seeing dads with their kids, right? And this one particular time, my husband was taking my daughter to a father daughter dance. And it was the sweetest thing. She was dressed up, her hair was done, he was all dressed up. She was so excited to have a date night with her daddy. And he was, thrilled to death to have his daughter and take her out, and how excited she was. And to me, that was you know, when you grow up without that, seeing that, your daughter and your husband like that, it's just gratitude and joy, pure joy, and just appreciation for him and her, and how she'll never know, how I felt. And in that moment, it was like the best feeling in the world. And of course, that sneaky whisper came saying, I wish I would have had that. And instead of the sadness that normally followed that, anger or even rage that happened. And I was so sick in that moment of my past ruining my joyful moments of watching my husband with my kids. It made me so angry. In my mind, I actually screamed, I am so effing sick of this. And it was such a powerful thought. And it was one that wasn't really familiar, because it was always the, "I wish I woulda had that, poor me." And it was like this thought, okay, so think about it this way, you've got a beach ball, right? And, you have the thought, it surfaces, you're pushing it down, right? You're holding it down, holding it down, holding it down, and then you see something that triggers it and it surfaces and it says, "I wish I woulda had that," right? And then you're in that moment and you got to push it back down because you don't want to be there. So you push it down, and then it's just constant up, down, up, down, up, down, takes the effort, everything. This particular day, that beach ball came flying out of the water and exploded into a million pieces. That's the anger and how powerful that thought was for me, that I didn't have a beach ball anymore. After that day, I was on my patio. After that day, the anger and the weight that had been on me all of my life was gone. And I didn't know how I did it, but I knew that I was never going to feel the same way. So, what I did, I had to research how I did it. I read all kinds of self-help books, listen to podcasts. I was just trying to figure out how I was able to do that, because honestly, I thought that I was going to die feeling broken, with the hole inside of me and the abandonment and rejection. I mean, I just thought that that's how life was going to be, and that's just how it was going to be for me. There was no other way. But the fact that that had happened to me that day, I'm like, wait a minute, something happened. I need to figure out what it was, how I did it. And during that time of the research, it made me more aware of my thinking and my feelings. And that's where I found a coach certification program that made sense of it all. And it was like perfect. It made everything make perfect sense. And it was like, it was just, I don't know. I don't know how else to explain it except I knew that it was meant to be. And it's so funny because when I was in the program, I was learning all this stuff. It was making sense to me of what I did to, I don't know. I don't want to necessarily call it fix myself, but, to repair, heal, and be at peace with it all. Right. And while I was in certification, they tell you, you need to find out, if you want to have, a business, find out who you want to work with. And it's so funny because I was going to be a weight coach. And when I think about it now, it just makes me laugh because one day I was coaching with someone and it dawned on me the whole reason I did all of this was because of that day on the patio, because I was a fatherless daughter and I was sick of feeling the way I felt, the way we all feel. And it's so funny because I'm like, "Oh my god, I have to coach fatherless daughters." I mean, what else could it possibly be? It couldn't be anything else. I couldn't possibly be a weight coach. I mean, that sounds ridiculous when I thought about it, and that's, what led me down the whole road in the first place. So, I was talking to one of my girlfriends who, um, she grew up with her father, but there was substance abuse and stuff there, so we kinda connected with that because we had the same effects. Different circumstances, different childhoods, but the same underlying issues, right? So I was talking to her about it and I'm like, "Do you think there's more of us? Do you think that there's more women in their, you know, 40s?" At that point I was 40, that feel this way? Because honestly, I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought that, there was just something wrong with me that this still affected me. And so I sent out a survey. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a survey. I'm going to put all my pain points. When I tried to research it, there's not a lot out there, and that really bothered me. But there was a little bit out there, a little couple articles and stuff. So I generated this whole survey asking the questions, the hard questions, the ages to see if people older are affected by this and, what the younger people think. Is their experience the same as mine? I knew what my life was like, but I wanted to see what other people's lives were like. And when I got those results back, I got 45 people who took the survey. And that's not even like marketing it. That's just kind of throwing it out there and seeing what people do. 45 women responded to that survey in 2 weeks. And that just confirmed for me that I wasn't alone and that it affects people of all ages. All ages. I mean, there was a woman that was in her 70s that completed the survey and she still felt that way. Still feeling it. And so that's when I knew what I needed to do. And I put together a specialized program for fatherless daughters, hitting all the pain points that I knew about and that were confirmed in my survey. And I ran a test pilot program and it was a huge success. I mean, I thought that after the program I would have to, rearrange things, maybe there'd be things people liked and they didn't like or what worked and what didn't, but it all worked. It all worked and they loved it all. I don't have to change anything. There's a couple questions in there that I would like to change just because I came up with them while I was coaching them, but it was amazing. And it was such a huge success after my last session with each of them. It just brought tears to my eyes because I know that this is what I was meant to do. My whole life led up to this moment. And all I want to do is help women understand that they don't have to feel this way anymore. You think that it's just how it's going to be, but it's not. I did it. And I was angry. I mean, super angry. You heard what I said to my brother. That's harsh. Some rough stuff. And so one of the things I want to do is I want to build awareness around this because we don't talk about it. That's one of the other problems is, you know, finding you guys because we don't advertise our pain, right? We don't, especially like what I said, I was in my 40s and still feeling this and I was embarrassed. I thought that, I was like the only one that still felt this way. So it's not like we go out and advertise and be like, hey, guess what? I'm 40. I still got dad issues. How are you? Right? So that's why I'm blasting out things and I'm trying to find all of my fatherless daughters to let you guys know that I can help you. Um, the Facebook group I created, it's women who grew up fatherless, heal and find peace with what you didn't have. It's a free Facebook group. I'm going to be posting content in there regularly to teach you how to heal. Um, I was thinking, there might be like a monthly theme where we can like really dive into that topic for that month and, really do the work on it. And I'm doing this for free. I want to help you. Want to help you. Now, I mean, let's see. I do have a one-on-one program out there that's available. There's, like I said, there's a couple things I want to change with it. Just some of the questions and everything, but it works and it's amazing. And I'm so excited about it. But I just wanted to really just give you guys the story. I mean, this is how I became a life coach for women who grew up fatherless to heal and find peace with the life they didn't have so that they can understand and overcome the effects it has on them today. So, thank you. Please join my Facebook group. It's free. There's value there. Come get it. Start doing the work. You just don't have to feel this way. You may not have known it, but you do now. Thank you guys very much. Love yous.